Alright guys, so today is the halfway point in our series on History Mondays of China, and today I'm going to do the period from about 1993 all the way up to the present day, hit the major events, cover the major leaders. Where I'm going moving forward for the next 3 or 4 episodes is I want to start focusing on specific issues within China, so looking at the Communist Party of China, how it works, how it's organized, looking at the international relations of China, talking about Korea, Taiwan, America, and also talking about the economic development of China and industrialization and people moving into urban areas. So that's where we're going moving forward, but today I'm going to cover the period from about 1993 all the way up until the present day. Now, how we're going to do it this episode is kind of how we've been doing it. We're going to focus on the main leaders of these different areas. There's 3 leaders from the 1993 all the way up until today. We've got Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao, and Xi Jinping. So Jiang was the leader of China from about 1993 all the way up until 2002, 2003. Usually leaders from this period all the way until today, they rule for about 10 years. So Jiang was the first leader. And so what did he do? He came into power sort of in the aftermath of the Tiananmen Square protest. And again, his main focus was to keep the economic development of China moving forward. Because again, that's what the CCP, that's what the Chinese Communist Party uses to legitimize its rule. And long story short, economic development under Jiang skyrockets. You've got 11.2% average annual growth, which is just ridiculous. I mean, the United States today would be extremely happy with 3% annual growth. And during this time period from 1993 until 2003, 11.2% annual growth of the economy. That is just an outrageous amount of growth. You've got 150 million people lifted out of poverty. You've got more industry development. You've got more entrepreneurship. You've got just, in short, economic development. Now, by far, the most important economic event that happens during this time period is China entering into the World Trade Organization, or the WTO. Now, China's entry into the WTO, though controversial, is a massive step forward for China, is a massive legitimizing force for the Communist Party of China. Getting into the WTO puts China on more of a level playing field with international players, gives international players access to Chinese markets, gives China access to international markets, opens up China's markets for more exports than it's ever enjoyed because tariffs go down, there's more of an even playing field. But I would say probably more than anything, it sort of signals that the Chinese economy is much more legitimate than it was under Mao Zedong and even to a certain extent Deng Xiaoping. Because when you're granted entry into the WTO, it's sort of like the international community is signaling, hey, we consider your economy at least more developed and at least more legitimate than it was beforehand. So I would say by far the most important thing that Jiang did was oversee China's push and entry into the WTO. From 2003 until 2012, 2013, Hu Jintao enters into governance. Now, like Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao rules by, instead of ruling by dictatorial fiat, just whatever he says goes, both Jiang and Hu Jintao rule by a group. It's more delegated authority, and this is a good thing. This is seen as sort of a legitimate style of governance. There seems to be more of a consultative approach to Chinese government, which helps. I mean, one person can't know everything about government, and the fact that Jiang and then Hu Jintao would sort of use this consultative approach to gain expertise in different areas and to utilize different people who have expertise in different areas really improves the party's ability to govern China. And again, this is really important because China needs to be able, the Communist Party of China needs to be able to govern well if it's going to earn and garner and keep the respect of its citizens. Now, economic development under Hu Jintao continues. China continues to be the economic engine of the world, and particularly in 2008, 2009, when the financial crisis smashes onto the global scene, China actually does relatively well. The Communist Party of China actually does a pretty good job of navigating the financial crisis. Now, crucially, the financial crisis of 2008, 2009 does 2 things. The first thing it does is it emboldens China, and particularly Chinese Communist Party members, to signal to the world, hey, look, our style of sort of quasi-market capitalism controlled and led by the central government is better than Western-style complete free market, because look what happened. The Western-style free market plunged the entire global economy into chaos. And so Chinese leaders, and you can see this in their official documents, in their discussions with other world leaders and economists, are starting to argue for this so-called China model. Now, alongside this, and sort of a more negative effect, is that the financial crisis strengthens hardline support within the Communist Party to stop or slow down opening up market liberalization within the Chinese economy, which actually isn't a good thing because China, even today, still has a lot of opening up to do, which could make its economy much more efficient and much more sustainable in the long term. So on the one hand, it ironically gives China a little bit more of the financial crisis, give China a little bit more of legitimacy and credibility to say, hey, look, we have a specific China model and it works and it's better than the Western model because they plunged us into financial catastrophe. But on the other hand, it's a little bit of a negative because it strengthens the hardliners within the Communist Party who say, look, we should not be opening up. This is what happens when you open up. Now, the last thing I'll say about Hu Jintao is probably the most significant event, at least in international eyes, for China was the 2008 Beijing Olympics. The Olympics were considered a success both inside of China and outside of China. It kind of signaled to the world that, hey, China has arrived. And like the WTO, like China's entry into the WTO, which served to legitimize Communist Party rule in China, the Beijing Olympics kind of cemented or went further in cementing the credibility of the Communist Party in its own citizens' eyes, which it cares much more about than anything else, and gave a little bit more credibility to the Communist Party of China in the eyes of the world.